Hi, everyone, and welcome to Be True, my podcast about the writing I love and the writing I do. I'm John Tessitore, and today, two poems by the great American poet Langston Hughes, Summer Night and Poem for Youth. Both are available online, and you can find all of my work at johntessitore.com. Like most people these days, I've been thinking a lot about who controls the message, who controls our access to information, to truth, who gets to hire and fire television personalities and why, who gets to silence musicians and why, who allows us to hear what we hear and see what we see, and who determines the silence and the invisibility of the powerless and why. My first idea for this episode was to examine these issues through the work of Langston Hughes, about whom I'd done some writing in a previous life. Hughes is a popular poet, and more radical than he seems sometimes, and he has a lot to say about silence and invisibility. He was born in 1901 and died in 1967. Although he's usually associated with the Harlem Renaissance, the black artistic and cultural movement that flowered in the late 1920s, his life and work spanned two world wars, the Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, and the beginning of the counterculture. His was one of those grand American life stories. At some point, he became an American legend, even more so today. But Hughes has always been a legend on the margins, not just because he wrote poems, which marginalizes all of us, but because he was a black gay man in 20th century America, a very, very difficult existence. But that marginalization gave him an important critical perspective on the mainstream, as marginalization often does. He knew all too well who was allowed to speak and who was not, and how the fighters were silenced. So my idea for today was to find one of Hughes's poems about silence and invisibility and build a little essay around it, to give this black gay hero of mine the floor once again, to give him a platform from which to speak from the past to our ever more corrupt culture. And you know what? Maybe I just have. Maybe in 2025, the mere reminder of a Langston Hughes or a James Baldwin or a Gwendolyn Brooks or a Zora Neale Hurston, maybe just saying their names is an act of resistance, like saying Cesar Chavez or Dolores Huerta or Leonard Peltier. A reminder of our brutal history, a signpost on the way to our brutal present. But my intention this week was not just to sing the American tradition of resistance or to invoke the canonical figures of that resistance, but to read a Hughes poem that breaks the illusions of power, that addresses the silence and the invisibility of the powerless. Alas, I got sidetracked. I fell in love with two Hughes poems that do something else entirely, and I'm going to read those instead. The first, Summer Night, was originally published in 1925. It's a poem of yearning, vague yearning, erotic yearning, sleeplessness, and it hit me square between the eyes this week. The second poem, Poem for Youth, originally published in 1927, is about a new generation breaking from the bonds of an old generation, something America desperately needs right now. Together, they're not political or radical or resistant. Together, they're just human. So today, instead of remembering the powerless, as I planned, we're going to remember the human, and what it means to yearn for and dream of freedom and joy. Summer Night. The sounds of the Harlem night drop one by one into stillness. The last player piano is closed. The last Victrola ceases with the jazz boy blues. The last crying baby sleeps, and the night becomes still as a whispering heartbeat. I toss without rest in the darkness. Weary as the tired night, my soul empty as the silence, empty with a vague, aching emptiness, desiring, needing someone, something. I toss without rest in the darkness until the new dawn, wan and pale, descends like a white mist into the courtyard. Poem for Youth. Raindrops on the crumbling walls of tradition, sunlight across moldy pits of yesterday. Oh, wise old men, what do you say about the fiddles and the jazz and the loud hey-hey, about the dancing girls and the laughing boys and the brilliant lights and the blaring joys, the firecracker days and the nights, love toys? Staid old men, what do you say about sun-filled rain drowning yesterday? And so, in the hope that a sun-filled rain drowns yesterday, this is John Tessitore concluding another installment of Be True. If you've listened this long, thank you. You can find all of my work at johntessitore.com. But first, read some Langston Hughes for yourself. Sometimes he seems simple, but he too contains multitudes. Special thanks to me for today's theme music, which I call B Chord. Maybe we'll talk again, and in the meantime, I gotta feed the dog. All right, Luna, I'm coming.